forget about all the books and the studies. You have all dealt with real patients. So of the last 1,000 people that you've seen that came to you, the question is, how did this work? I mean, let's not make everything sound like everything's perfect. Did you eat a whole food plant-based diet? You live to 110, you never have a health issue. What is the reality when you say to someone, I want you to eat beans, whole grains, nuts and raw nuts and seeds, lots of vegetables, some fruit, um, exercise, sleep well, get lots of fresh air. What happens? Do these people still get heart attacks? Do they get cancer? Do they get diabetes? Do they get chronic kidney disease? Do they get arthritis? Do they get Alzheimer's? Like, what is happening in the real world? Is it true that you really do? Does everyone lose weight? Does everyone prevent heart attacks? Like, what happens? Like, what is not the one case best scenario of the 1,000 people? What happened to the last 1,000? How good is this? And what are the pitfalls, or not the pitfalls? What is the limitation? So we could be realistic. If we're on this diet, how far it can take us and how far it can't.
I'll go. There's so much to say about that. First, it took me like, I don't know, at least 7-8 years to realize that I was going to stop trying to convince people. Like, that was not my job. It was destroying my mental health. And I realized that if someone wants to do this, I will love them all the way through. And that is what I do. So people come to me, they are ready to do this. Now, most people come to me with a predisposed, like they've got something going on. Like they have a diagnosis, they've been struggling with the diagnosis, they are trying to get off medications, they saw someone close to them go through something, they saw a documentary, but people come to me ready to change. Otherwise, I'm not going to try. It's like, okay, there's a lot of dietitians out there that will tell you what's the best kind of meat to eat. I'm not that dietitian. So people come to me when they're ready. So I don't follow them for years and years, not all of them. Some of them, it's a temporary time. Here's how to transition to a plant-based diet. So that's the first part of that, is that you have to want it. And I say that as a daughter of a father who's like the people that I love that are so close to me that are suffering because of their diet. So even though they know what I do and they know how passionate I am, they know what I've seen, you have to want it. And I say it's like you could lead a human to healthy, but you can't make them eat. And unfortunately, most people don't want to change their diet. They want the magic pill, they want the surgery, they want the whatever. So when they're ready to do it, I consistently see positive results. When they're ready to go, which is all that it takes, right? Because then they're eating a diet of vegetables, fruits, whole grains, legumes, mushrooms, nuts, seeds, herbs, and spices in infinite tasty combinations. They're supplementing with the notable nutrients we just discussed. And the magic begins, and people start, decreasing medication use. They start having their blood pressure normalized that they've had years of suffering with. Blood cholesterol goes down. I mean, like, it's so much fun to get labs tested. Like, we look forward to the next lab test because the results are always so profound. And then I do a lot of weight loss. So my clients like, oh, will never be that weight. That could never happen. And they consistently get to that when they're following this way of eating. And it's just extraordinary because it's like, I love my job. It's like I see people get better, and I wasn't trained for that. I didn't expect it to be this dramatic. I will also add that I'm both excited and concerned about all of the products that are on the market now, and anything I could eat, I could eat vegan now is not necessarily a good thing. So for the first time, and I've been teaching this for 16 years, and in the last 3, 4, 5 years, I've got long-term vegans coming to me with the same things: high blood pressure, high cholesterol, or high blood sugars, or like stuff is happening, can't lose weight. And I always ask for food journal. If you want to work with me, I need to see what you're eating, because people say, I eat healthy, I don't understand. We don't understand until we write it down and really look at it objectively. And these people that are on a vegan diet are eating, they think there's this health halo that is applied to some of these products, but candy bars and cookies and burgers and all that fried food and all that stuff that's delicious. I love to go to a vegan fast food once in a while. It's delicious. But if that's considered healthy and people are consuming this on a consistent basis, they are getting very similar health outcomes as their omnivorous counterparts. And this is something I never expected to see. I guess I never expected to see so much on the marketplace, which is very exciting as a long-term vegan, right? It's extraordinary. However, we need to use those products very conscientiously and treat them as we would treat on any diet, as a treat food, as a celebratory once in a while type of thing. I call it a day of deliciousness. But really the overall diet needs to come from whole plant foods. If you're not losing weight, you're eating too much, because you could even eat too much and not lose weight eating those whole plant foods. So you have to rein it in for a certain period of time. That's a whole other subject. Other than that, people get healthier eating this way. And it's just, I've yet to see someone that doesn't do better eating this way, eating a whole food plant-based diet.
Do you have people who come to you and end up getting a heart attack and dying who eat this way? Like, in other words, how yes, I understand that people lose weight, but sometimes people do this, they eat a whole food plant-based diet, they do it very well, and they still get a heart attack and die, or they still get cancer and die, or they still get type 2 diabetes and it progresses? I mean, is this like all the time it works? Like, if you are overweight and you go on a water fast for 30 days, every single time you lose weight, it's like physics. Are we saying when people eat a whole food plant-based diet and do it correctly, do they still sometimes have a deadly heart attack? Do they sometimes develop cancer and die? Do they sometimes get full-blown type 2 diabetes that gets worse? Do you see that, or do you see that?
Unfortunately, it doesn't make you bulletproof. It doesn't. This is not the most, like, there's nothing that can get you. And you don't, and there's all these pre-existing, what were you eating before? And did you smoke? And cancer is a whole other world, because there's so many different types of cancers, and it's so multifactorial. I've seen long-term vegans, unfortunately, tragically, horrifically, people I've been very close to lose their battle with cancer. But does that mean just statistics say how often not when? And so it's not making you impossible to die. We're all going to die of something, and we all have some kind of preclusions based on our history, our family history, our genetics do play a small role. But overall, you can absolutely improve your risks, and you can decrease the progression of a lot of these diseases, but nothing is perfect. So I do see and if I had to choose anything, I don't think anyone could be harmed by eating this. I've yet to see someone be harmed and do worse by eating this way. I've seen people live longer, even with a horrible diagnosis and prognosis, with a pre-existing condition. They switched their diet and they far exceeded what was expected and what the statistics would have predicted based on their specific diagnosis because of eating this way. So unfortunately, it's not perfect, but nothing is perfect. This is the most perfect thing, and there is no harm that could come from eating this way when it is really done conscientiously, in my experience.
Let me comment on that, because I get asked that question several times, and there is no question that plant-based diets are beneficial across the board. That is just a fact. Now the question of, well, if I go plant-based, will I still have a heart attack, or will I still develop cancer? What we all need to understand.
Just diet. I think diet is number one, but it's a function of physical activity, of sleep, of stress, of all of these. There are many things that can contribute to health, and it's possible for someone to be vegan and to be under tremendous stress, to not get enough sleep, to be exposed to all sorts of chemicals, to, there's all sorts of things, to not get enough sunshine, to not, that can contribute to these diseases. The second thing I want to say is that there are such a variety. There's not one plant-based diet. There are a range of plant-based diets. And as Julieanna was talking about, the number of sort of junk food vegan options now are incredible. But even if someone's on a relatively whole food plant-based diet, one person may be living on a lot of brown bread and brown rice, and another is living on greens and beans and sweet potatoes. And so so there are real differences in our food selection, and that will impact our risk of disease. But I completely agree that it is highly unlikely. Now, the people that I've consulted, the people that do the best are sticking to the program the best, basically. The change in your lifestyle equals the change in your health status, and so if you're exercising regularly and getting out in nature and sleeping enough and eating a really truly whole food plant-based diet, your risk of getting, and you're not over consuming, because it is possible to over consume even on a pretty healthy plant-based diet. So if you're doing all of those things, your risk of type 2 diabetes is pretty much nil. Your risk of heart disease, you said it beautifully, Milton. But your risk of cancers, it depends. There are some cancers that are 60 or 70% associated with diet choices. Some are much lower, and so they are more have more to do with your exposure to certain chemicals, for example. So that will vary more widely. Hypertension, I mean, it's very, very affected by diet. So most chronic diseases that most of us are dying from are pretty much stoppable when you change, your diet, number one, but also you're making other healthy lifestyle choices. And I think those are the main points I wanted to make.
Yeah, I just want to really emphasize one thing that Brenda said, and that is about consistency, because invariably I'll get asked about, well, doc, does it matter if I cheat every now and then? And my response is, well, how would you respond if your spouse asked you that question? Yes, it matters. and because our bodies respond to exposure to many of these nutrients the way our immune system responds to an antigen. It starts a cascade that affects things in a very broad way. So even a small exposure ends up having a big effect. So no, you need to be consistent. And I'm like, people say, well, should I try to do it little by little? I'm like, look, lay on the floor, kick, scream, throw things, go through cold turkey, but get off poison. It's like if your child came and said, Mom, I want to smoke crack in moderation. Is that okay? Of course not. And it's the same thing with unhealthy foods. And that's just it.
I agree. And whenever people say, well, moderation is the answer. I mean, if everything you eat in moderation is unhealthy, it's still going to kill you. So